Hey Cam, are we still blurry?
No, it seems good enough.
Okay.
Wow, it looked really blurry.
Yeah, I was really confused about where we were.
I don't think we.
Well, thank you. So.
We don't have it for that.
Like decided.
The opinion of those.
Yes, they were nice.
I have all these good ideas and then.
Yeah, so giant. That's good.
It'll be fun. I am not artsy.
Yeah.
Hey, we have some guests. That's nice. All right, mostly us. Right.
Everyone but my dad's world. Yeah. I do.
From Londonderry.
Yes.
Keep them not.
So, yeah. So it's, yeah. I know. Yeah, you better. Things about great. We're talking over a house, but it's way.
Nice to meet you.
Like, and.
Yeah.
So it's basically declined.
I know.
All year round.
My mask is right there.
It's. I did an intro.
All right, everybody, I think we're about ready.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Me? Yeah, fine.
There's no quorum.
Right. No, a lot of our communities recognize Juneteenth. So all of folks here, I'm gonna guess, go by the state holidays.
Yep.
Which don't recognize.
We recognize the importance of it.
Thank
We don't,
you.
but we don't get it off.
No, well, it's good to recognize.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and ad lib and get us going. I'm Sylvia Von Aulock. I'm the executive director here at Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. So Here we are, June 19th. Let's take, we're not gonna do actions on minutes. We're just gonna go around the room, have everyone please speak loud enough so that our friends at home, our friends virtual can hear us. So Lucy, start us off.
Lucy St. John, New Hampshire DRC Bureau of Planning and Community Assistance.
Angela Pandolf, Director of Transportation at Easter Seals.
Tracy Whitehead with MTA CART.
Go ahead, Liz.
Liz Robidoux, Town of Derry Planning.
Nick Principato, Town of Derry Planning Intern.
Go ahead, Jim.
James Bayo, Principal Planner with Southern New Hampshire Planning.
And
Adam Lesney, staff at the commission. Nate Miller, staff at the commission.
David Tilton, staff of the commission.
Anthony Summers, staff of the commission.
Nicole Berry, intern at Southern Planning Commission.
Liliana Hornum, Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Suzanne Muniver, also staff.
Zach Swift, the commission.
so we're taking over the world, as you can see from this meeting. Now let's go to our folks at home. Grant over in Hooksett.
Grant McGregor, Town Planner in Hooksett.
Excellent. And there's Caroline.
Morning.
Morning. Could you just let the rest of the group know, you're.
Oh my goodness, yes. Sorry. Caroline will. Yeah, you don't know me. Caroline Wilson. Caroline Wilson, Dairy Planning Department.
You are too cute this morning. Let's go to
Thank you.
Matt.
Mac Pavira, NHDES.
Excellent. Did I miss Grant? I thought we said.
Cam.
You're on the cam.
We're on to Cam. Thank you. Cam,
Hi, good morning, everybody. Cam Perlman with the commission.
excellent. And Kathy, the mystery Kathy.
Kathy, Town of New Boston.
Kathy, Town of New Boston. Kathy, could you let us know for our minutes what your last name is?
Vieira.
You got it. Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Kathy. Good to have you with us. Mike from Londonderry. Maybe stepped away. Kristen.
Hi, I'm here.
Excellent. Could you just introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry, I did step away. Kristen Farr, Town Planner. Hi, David. And I've been here 5 months now, I think, so.
Okay, and the TOL is Town of Londonderry.
Yes.
And could you just nudge Mike? Is he there around the corner?
Hold on, he should be. Hold on, I'll give him a little poke over there. Hold on.
Yeah, exactly. And while that's happening, we have a phone, someone on the
That
phone.
was Kathy.
That was Kathy.
That's Kathy.
On there twice.
Oh, okay. That's how much she wants to hear this meeting. Yeah, it's gonna be a good one. Yeah, of course, you all know that already, though.
Excited.
All right. Well, yeah.
So Mike says he doesn't have a mic, so.
Oh,
here.
all right. Okay, thank you for that. And yeah, so Mike is also with the Town of Londonderry. He's their GIS guru. So that's his role there. And works with the Conservation Commission. All right, so we've gotten through introductions. So why don't we head right into the exciting presentation from Nate on tip amendment number 1.
Yeah, so I depending on what the consensus of the committee is today, I may spare you that presentation. I did walk through in some detail last month every project change in tip amendment number 1. There hasn't been any new project changes since what we discussed last month. You all got tip amendment number 1 in your packets, and so there's no surprises or new project changes or anything like that from what we talked about last month. If anybody would like me to, I do have a presentation and I can walk through all the project changes again. Otherwise, I'm happy to spare you that, and we move on to other portions of the agenda. But if there are any questions on tip amendment number one, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, it would be good to have, we can't take any action, but consensus of those members present that amendment number one be adopted by our MPO next Tuesday.
If we could make a motion, I would.
Well, we can. But,
Well, we can start with Liz starting our consensus. Well, first, let's answer the first question. Would anyone like to see the tip amendment number one presentation? Lucy, I'm going to look at you, and what are your thoughts? Would you like to do a brief overview, or are you happy with?
I think it's certainly up to you, but Nate had explained that it was all the same as the
Last time.
meeting, so unless somebody has some objections.
I don't see any objections online, so why don't we just thumbs up for everyone who has a consensus that we move this to the commission. Thumbs up. I'm seeing thumbs up. Thank you. Thumbs. Okay, and I'm a voting member.
thumbs up is probably the best we can do, I guess.
2 thumbs up. So we have consensus. Yay.
Thank you.
All right, this allows us a little bit more time, and Suzanne's going to be our first presenter then with an overview of Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan, or better known as TRIP.
The shorthand for it. All right, let me, first of all, make sure I'm on the screen.
Where's can you give me that?
Of course.
I will get you front center.
Oh, Becky.
Becky's
Great.
here. Hi,
All
Becky.
right, I'm gonna share my screen. And Pam is gonna tell me if this goes into full screen.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. And let me hide the meeting controls. A little smaller too. All right. Okay, thank you all this morning for being here, recognizing Juneteenth and still joining us today for this TAC meeting. I'm excited to talk to you today about the Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan. It's been about a year since I presented it to this group. And we're going to talk about why. There's a lot of changes that are happening in the way that we're approaching it. And what I want to do today is walk you through the current status of the draft plan and some proposed next steps for how we can move it forward. So to start with a little bit, so agenda is, I'm going to review some basics. I mean, after a year, I'm sure none of you all remember what this topic is. So we'll do a little bit of some basics. We'll talk about updates for 2025. Given the shifting sands and the way that federal dynamics have changed over the last few months, I'll share more about details about the draft plan and development, and Zach is going to weigh in on some of the technical analysis too. And then we'll talk about next steps. So always good to start with a definition of resilience. I think we all have ideas in our mind, but it's good to get on the same page about what we mean. This is a definition from Federal Highway Administration. It's used by several other federal agencies. Resilience is about our ability to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions. And when there's a disruption, when there's a disaster, our ability to withstand and respond to and recover. So there's a lot of different words. My shorthand is like, how do we survive and thrive in the face of unknown future conditions, whether it's a natural disaster, climate change, what have you. So what is a resilience improvement plan? This is and first of all, I'm going to change our acronym. For SNHPC, we're going to call this our Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan. First of all, I find it to be a friendlier acronym, like come take a trip with me versus RIP. Also, it helps us distinguish. There's actually a resilience improvement plan that was recently developed by state DOT, and it helps us distinguish between the two. So for our Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan, here's an overview of the basics behind this. This is a planning opportunity that was authorized under the Federal PROTECT program. I'm not going to read that acronym. I've been looking at it for years now, and I still you could not quiz me on what that means if I wasn't looking at it. But resilient operations, transformative, efficient, cost saving, like there's a lot of great words in there, but really it's about how do we build a more resilient surface transportation network across the country and in our communities. These type of plans can be completed by state DOTs and MPOs. These are completely voluntary. They're not required. But for any community that cares about resilience of their transportation network, it's a pretty important thing to do. We're taking a systemic approach. We're really thinking about the transportation system as a whole. We're thinking about short-term needs. We're thinking about long-term investments. And fundamentally, we're looking at risk-based assessment. So what are the assets that we have in our surface transportation network? Where are they vulnerable? Where are we at highest risk and really need to prioritize some resilience upgrades to improve those assets. And this is just one example. This image you see at the right, you have a culvert upgrade. These photos, lovely photos, are courtesy of the Nature Conservancy. That's an example of the type of resilience upgrade that might really improve the resilience of your transportation system. Other things that are really important to highlight, and I remember people got really excited about this last year when I brought it up. There's a carrot within the Protect program where if you have the potential to actually have a local cost share reduction in projects that receive Protect funding because they're focused on resiliency. So for those projects, if it's prioritized within a resilience improvement plan or a RIP or a TRIP in our case, you can have a 7% reduction in local match. If that resilience improvement plan is then incorporated into a long-range transportation plan, in our case, the MTP, that's an additional 3% reduction in local match. And James and I are collaborating. We're making sure that the ideas from this trip are definitely getting woven into the current MTP update that's happening right now. And so then basically after I presented this probably last summer, over the course of the fall, we did a lot of different things. I was able to participate in some really fantastic webinars and roundtables with other folks who were interested across the country in pursuing this initiative. And really I found some model communities where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. Dutchess County in New York was one that I really love what they did with their trip. We also served on the stakeholder group that was helping to guide New Hampshire DOT's statewide resilience improvement plan. And this is really important because I'll talk more about how we're going to actually be using some of this data as we move forward. They were able to enlist a great consulting firm called Cambridge Systematics. Cambridge Systematics has done a ton of resilience improvement plans, working with DOTs and MPOs around the country. So they have a lot of insights they were able to offer through their process. And then we also convened a group of regional trip champions to identify some priority hazards and transportation assets that we're interested in examining further as a region. So I know that I think a couple folks in the room were there. I think Elizabeth, Tracy, I think you might have been there too. We had a really good group come together for a virtual work session. Got some really valuable insights just in terms of where our thinking lies and what are our priorities for our region. And we have a number of different hazards that folks are interested in, a number of different assets. We recognize that we might not be able to address everything in this initial trip, but we have kind of a game plan for our long-term vision for our resiliency concerns. And then we also kind of vetted these goals. So the main things we're striving to do as a region is to enhance our understanding of risks to the transportation network. We want to identify any highly vulnerable transportation assets, services that really need to be targeted for resilience improvements. We want to kind of systematically build resilience into the way we think about local and regional transportation planning more effectively. So we're looking for this exercise to be part of that. And then we want to position the region to maximize the benefits of available federal funding. I think that's a key goal out of this work. All right, so then we get to 2025. We have a new federal administration. We start to get some directives about how priorities are changing in terms of federal funding and programming. And unfortunately, for folks who were excited about applying for discretionary Protect funds at that time, and I know that DES and DOT were actively working on a proposal at that time, the notice of funding opportunity for Protect was basically put on hold in February. So I took a screenshot of this earlier this week. Nothing has changed, no significant updates, but the program is under review. But basically at this point in time, early in 2025, talked to folks at the office here, reached out to Trip Champions, and we were like, let's just take a wait and see approach. Let's not hurry to put a ton of work into something that we don't know where it's heading. Over the course of the last few months, a couple of great things have happened. One, DOT managed to complete their resilience improvement plan and share a lot of their statewide data with us, which is fantastic. I've also heard, rumor has it from folks working in the climate planning field that Protect funding will eventually be reactivated. There may be some modifications, but people see it on the horizon that is coming down the pipeline again. So we wanted to figure out, what can SNHPC do to streamline our efforts? We don't need to go big. This is not go big or go home. This is how do we fulfill the requirements and really set ourselves up for success with a solid plan using the materials that we have at hand? So we want to springboard off of New Hampshire DOT's data. So the fact that we have that in hand, Zach has access to the GIS layers for all of this great flooding vulnerability data that covers the whole state. We can carve out what we need for our region and take a deeper dive into that. That's what we're using right now. What does this mean? We are significantly narrowing our field of analysis for this iteration of the trip. So we're only addressing flooding. And actually, that is our most significant and costly natural disaster to worry about. So if we had to pick one thing, that is the thing. We also have the best data for it. So that's okay for now. And we're going to stay focused on flooding. We're also only looking at the assets that were analyzed in that broader statewide DOT analysis. So we're not going to be able to look at transit right now or rail trails or things like that. We're focused on federal aid eligible road segments, bridges and culverts. And you can see here that with stream crossings, the distinction between a bridge and a culvert is really just a matter of what is the span. So basically anything over or equal to 20 feet is considered a bridge. Anything less than that is considered a culvert in terms of just the mapping and analysis. So that's our new approach. We're leveraging the New Hampshire DOT data. We are adopting a much more streamlined trip than what we initially envisioned. And all of this is in anticipation of reactivation of this funding stream. And of course, in the same way TIP amendments happen, we can always amend as needed once we see what comes down the pipeline in terms of the funding parameters. So I just want to stop there and see if there's any questions about this significant change in our approach.
No, I think streamlining will make it easier.
Yep, exactly.
Have stuff.
Exactly. We want to have something kind of adopted and usable as soon as possible. So I'm going to talk to you now, and Zach and I are going to walk through a little bit about the draft plan and development. A couple of things that are happening. I'll just go through the chapters really quickly. We're going to talk about what is the systematic approach to transportation resilience. How is this fitting into all of the work that the agency has done on resilience to date? How are we kind of embedding this into our existing transportation planning process? So it's not a new thing. It's something that we can do a little bit more seamlessly. We're going to have a chapter really focused on the data behind inland flooding because that is our most significant hazard. We're going to have a chapter where we basically synopsize the DOT data analysis process. I'm not going to worry about defining all these words right now, but when you get into the document itself, you'll understand more about what do we mean by criticality, vulnerability, risk. This is the one that people really care about. This is our list. This is our priority list. What are the projects that we're going to put in our trip that once they're in there, then become eligible for the potential reduction in local cost share? And I will say that it's important to note this list does not need to be prioritized. By being in the trip, it represents a trip priority. So we don't need to go through any exercise where we score or kind of put things in any type of order. It's just having a list that we all kind of agree upon as being necessary for resilience. And then the final chapter, we'll talk about what are our future plans? What are our future aspirations for further iterations of this and the other types of hazards, transportation assets that we really want to bring to the fore in our understanding of resilience. Okay, and with that, everyone cares most about the project list. So Zach's going to talk a little bit about how we got there.
Sure. So the project list for this, we called or collected projects from existing project lists. So that includes the TIP, the 10-year plan, the MTP, the state's RIP, and as well as TAP projects and 10-year priority 10-year project priorities that have not yet been adopted, so they don't have a number, but they exist as a project. And then from that, we removed projects that focus on assets that are not included in this particular analysis. So that includes things like transit and debt service. We also removed projects that aren't directly related to resilience. So signalization, paving, those, I'll say they're not good projects, they're just not relevant for this. And then we also removed projects outside the SNHPC region. You might be wondering, why do we have projects outside the SNHPC region? Remember that the Manchester UZA goes up outside the region into Bow, Pembroke. And so for the MTP, we have to carry a couple of those projects in our MTP, even though we don't actually have anything to do with them. So the analysis was, we identified all projects that fall within 200 feet of an asset appearing on the DOT's vulnerability maps for 2050. So that's bridges, culverts, and road segments. Also should say that all projects that were either stream crossing related to stormwater drainage, they automatically made it in. Then we had to go in and QC to remove false positives. The issue is, we've had this with our own work as well, is that most of the statewide data does not have a Z-axis. That is, it doesn't know how high an object exists in space. So you end up with instances like this, where I guess it's called Nazir Byron Bridge. This is just west of here. Leads from the west side into Bernardville. Flag that as flooding. If that ever floods, overtops, yeah, you better have an arc ready for you. So, that obviously, is shouldn't be included. Now we can go through and hand pick those because we just have so many fewer projects than statewide. So here's an instance of what this looks like. This is Londonderry 41593, the safety and operational improvements at the intersection of NH 28 and NH 128. So you can see the blue there is the project area, and then that red there is the vulnerable roadway segment and culvert. And the end result is this: we have a project ID for most of them. We have the town or towns where the project takes place. We classified the type of project just for more clarification. And then you have the scope, and then we also included whether it is included in the state RIP.
All right, and so basically at this point, Zach and I, Liliana's helping now that she's on board too. We're busy pulling this all together. We expect to have a draft plan posted for review within the next couple of weeks. This is going to be an opportunity where we will definitely be seeking input from folks on TAC, from the commission, from the MPO, and also from Federal Highway Administration. So I will be reaching out to Lee Levine because fundamentally we can't move forward with adoption until we get sign off from them. So we'll have a period of review. You'll be able to take a closer look at the projects, of course, ask Zach and I questions if you're confused about anything that may or may not be on the list. But our goal is to adopt this over the summer and, of course, amend as needed as the situation evolves. Any questions?
I want to stop sharing. See.
Oh, sure, of course. Oh, there we go. Nope.
I think.
I feel like Zoom updated and I lost my skills entirely.
You're good. You're good.
Did I stop sharing my screen?
No, down at the bottom.
Nope.
No.
Not yet.
Straight down, six.
Yeah, the green share thing you can.
But it's giving me the chance to share. What do I do?
I'm not the only one that.
The new Zoom is confounding to me. I'm gonna close this out, this part, right? Wait, sorry, Cam, you still see my presentation?
Yes.
Why on earth?
Go back to my screen.
Go back to my screen.
What are the little three dots? See the little three dots?
Oh, good idea.
Oh, wow.
I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Any questions from our online viewers?
All right. All that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good adaptation or adaptation. Yeah, that sounds better. Yeah, of the trip and good, quick thinking on that. All right. So no action needed and could be taken. And I just want to recognize, I think I saw Becky Ebert from Bedford. Hi, Becky. And we can move to our next item, which is James Vale on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Take it away, Jim.
Oh my,
Well,
what's going on there? Okay.
Wow.
Linda, when is your next Zoom training class?
I know, it's just, it's like, I learned the first initiation I had to computers. I learned that as long as you.
Cam, are you seeing full screen now?
Touch anybody but.
I'm seeing presenter mode, James.
Okay.
Just, you're gonna have to duplicate it.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. How's that?
That's good.
Thank you. All right, so James Bayo, Principal Planner with the Planning Commission, and today I'm going to talk to you about progress we've been making on the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. So I'm going to cover a couple things here. I'm going to highlight project milestones that we've been through, share some information about the planning process, and talk about next steps. Just as a review, we've gone over this a couple times over the last almost a year now that we've been working on this. But the MTP is a long-term strategic plan for how to invest in transportation in our region. It's something we're obligated to do through the structure of federal code. And it's a good resource. It allows us to really think about strategically about how we want to spend the available resources to maintain our system. So it also is a good tool for promoting coordination amongst the local communities and with the state. I'll note here, we have a link on this slide for the project webpage, and I'll talk a little more about that later. So milestones, what have we accomplished so far? Well, we've done a fairly exhaustive desk review of existing transportation plans. We've spoken with nearly every town staff. I think it was George before you, Liz, but we did get to nearly everyone. We conducted a public survey, which had over 500 people participate, or close to 500 people participate. We've drafted up a few chapters of the MTP, which we now share publicly on the webpage. And this includes putting together goals and objectives, as well as a system performance report, which is something we're obligated to do as part of the MTP. So the desk review, we reviewed quite a few plans, and they range from local plans that you might publish at your towns to New Hampshire an assortment of New Hampshire DOT plans to our own plans here at the Regional Planning Commission. And what we saw is that there were some pretty common themes, much of them around the reliance on the automobile in our region. You know, nearly everyone needs to drive in order to make their daily trips. But we also saw in these plans that communities are seeking additional options, especially options for people who don't drive to get to jobs, goods, and services, including what we're seeing now is an aging demographic in the region. And for our rural towns, you know, our Francis towns, our Candias, Deerfields, they don't have a lot of options. So the desk review, the different scales here at the local level, we looked at master plans, TIF districts, capital improvement plans. In some instances, towns have local local projects like rail trail improvement plans. At the regional level, we have the airport, we have our own congestion mitigation management process, and our regional trails plan. At the state level, the state goes through a similar exercise where they have a statewide long-range plan. This is highway safety improvement, freight plans, and other kind of operational plans, something called TISMO. At the federal level, there is really good resource from Federal Highway and USD on how to put together an MTP. There's a lot of guidance for performance measures, which leads into the system performance report and scenario planning guidance, although I don't think we'll be doing that here in our region in this go round. In total, we reviewed 22 different plans and identified transportation goals and objectives and measures across those plans. We inventoried all that stuff into an Excel sheet so that we could reference it as we were putting together our own MTP goals and objectives. Just as a closing on this, this desk review resulted in direction setting for our MTP process, understanding of improvements that are proposed or planned, alignment of our region's goals with the goals of other entities at the local level and at the state level and the federal level. And we used what we learned in the desk review to inform the kind of questions we asked the stakeholders in our interviews. And the desk review is also a potential source for projects that would be included in the MTP's project list. So what's next? We interviewed stakeholders and we talked to them about different themes around the future of transportation, around challenges with transportation, how mobility has been changing since COVID. And we heard a lot from them about the kind of priorities that they have at the local level, the preferred means for connecting with people at a local level, which was important for the next step in the MTP process, the public survey. And we also asked them, because we're in the midst of doing our comprehensive planning exercise, we asked them about desired future land use outcomes as well. Some core themes from the interviews with stakeholders is that the region has a reliance on automobiles. We know this from other plans. We heard a lot about shifting travel patterns. So people's commutes are changing. The way travel is, volumes are moving around local communities is reflective of a culture where people are working from home post-COVID, at least a part of the time. I think when I spoke with Becky in Bedford, they talked a lot about their lunch rush has increased significantly in the local restaurants. And really we're attributing that to people being able to do their work from home and have meetings locally. The other one that we heard recurring in nearly every community is that an aging population is posing some risks around mobility. As people age out of driving, they're really limited in where they can go and when they can go there. Just to summarize some of the themes that we heard here, transportation is a priority. Rail and tourism is maybe not so much a priority. Local control of projects, when they happen, where they happen, is a priority. And people are unsure about how new technology is going to influence transportation. For example, will electric vehicles promulgate through the region in the near future or by 2050? And it's not clear what the answer to that is. From here, we did a public survey. And the survey was really focused on public engagement in the MTP process. And so to do the survey, we developed this Connections 2050 webpage as a separate standalone project website. that we could steer people to, so that we weren't overwhelming them with, well, what is SNHPC? What is an MPO? What is an MTP? We really wanted to simplify people's understanding. We're in the Manchester region and we're updating our long-range transportation plans. And so this was the basis for conducting a survey. And the survey used social media to reach out to a wide audience, people that don't typically engage with us here at SNHPC. And it was rather successful. We had, like I mentioned before, nearly 500 people participate in the survey. And the survey was really useful in informing, transportation needs and priorities of the average citizen in the region. What do we hear from that survey? Transportation choice is a top priority. People are looking for options to get around that don't necessarily require a car. The number 2 priority, and nearly as high in sort of importance in the survey results, was housing and transportation. You're gonna say, well, like, how does transportation affect housing? It's maybe not directly or immediately clear, but the way we invest in roads determines what kind of housing we build and where we build housing. So it's kind of these build it and they will come things. So people saw this priority of leveraging transportation investments, i.e., investing in the transportation network, as a tool to add housing near jobs and services. And then the third priority here of the top priorities was safety and efficiency. And really that's about making sure that people aren't at risk of injury or death on the road, that they can get where they need to go in a timely manner, and that the roads they drive on are not falling apart. Just to look at the safety and efficiency priority a little closer, over just under 2/3 of respondents picked this as a priority. And we have enough data from people responding to demographic questions, optional demographic questions at the end of the survey, to know that 70% of respondents who are identify as a minority also see this as an issue. So we've covered the plan review. We've talked about the stakeholder interviews, the public survey, and then we got to work writing chapters for the MTP. And so the first one is existing conditions. In this existing conditions chapter, we talk about the function and scale of the transportation system in the region. And we talk about the impact that population, housing, and employment has on travel, and then define those travel patterns. It's worth noting that the federal aid eligible road network here in the region has 4,800 lane miles, which is equivalent to driving from here to Anchorage, Alaska, with maybe a couple of detours along the way. So it's a lot of road. It's a tremendous amount of resources. I mean, if you had to put a price tag on the value of all this road, it would be enormous. So it references traffic counts and traffic volumes. And so I just want to highlight a fact here that in 2023, it was an estimated 2.7 billion miles of travel on the region's road network, which is kind of hard to comprehend. And that the existing conditions also documents things like activity centers. What are the generators of traffic volume? So you think of like South Willow Street as a place that generates traffic. Maybe the airport as a place that generates traffic. All that lays out our system in the report. The existing conditions talks about all modes of transportation. So within that, we also talk about the location of rail lines, which are fairly limited in the region. They basically exist just along the Merrimack River here. But it also talks about the concept of introducing commuter rail and highlights the proposed capital corridor project that New Hampshire DOT was produced. It also describes our public transit system that you're all familiar with, MTA, CART rider, and it talks about the fixed route. One thing of note that we saw in the data, looking at the existing conditions, is that fixed route bus ridership is declining. And that was exacerbated by COVID, and there seems to be a partial recovery in ridership since COVID, but it's still, if you look at it in a longer time scale, it seems as though bus ridership is declining. The existing conditions also documents community transportation. So, we have a representative from Easter Seals here. They provide this kind of service here. And thanks to Ben, we were able to identify that over 15,000 on-demand trips were provided to citizens in need in 2023. So that's no joke. We also in this area talk, it's not quite community transportation, so to speak, but the MTP's existing conditions documents other facilities that support rideshare and people being able to get out of their private automobile. So Londonderry Exit 5 Park and Ride facility contains 728 parking spaces, and this is a location that regularly hits full capacity. So it is a well-used asset. We have bike and pedestrian facilities. You guys are all familiar with this. Multi-use paths, rail trails, bike lanes, sidewalks. They are not really evenly distributed across the region. You'll see these much more in the Manchesters and Derrys, kind of more urbanized areas, than you'll see in the more rural areas. And it's worth noting that SNHPC does a really good job collecting bike and pedestrian counts on both on-road and on-trail facilities. And this is something that SNHPC can really be proud of. I think, I wouldn't know, maybe Adam could tell me, but I think we're really at the forefront as an MPO in collecting this data within New Hampshire. And then we do some work around, it used to be called Complete Streets, but we're going to call it Streets Designed for All Users now, and Transportation Demand Management. We also have freight information, which is another mode of transportation that the federal government asks us to plan around. And the Planning Commission has done some interesting work around this, especially around freight truck parking. And most recently, yesterday, Dave organized a listening session with some freight stakeholders. And that's all information we'll incorporate into the MTP. So that brings us to the next section here. Another chapter is goals and objectives. Within goals and objectives, we talk about a vision for the region. We talk about goals, their corresponding objectives, and then it leads into the next chapter, measures. So a vision really for SNHPC is pulled from the comprehensive plan, which has a transportation vision. And so we use that as a basis for laying out a vision in the MTP. We have goals and objectives, which reflects local, state, and federal transportation priorities and public priorities, of course. And then measures, which are something that federal government requires us to do. So we have measures on safety, asset congestion, and congestion that we track on a regular basis. Within the draft MTP, we have the following 8 goals: a transportation system that is safe and secure, efficient and reliable, supportive of the economy, flexible and offers choice, environmentally sound, land use smart, works for the public, and financially sustainable. Within each of these goals, there are 3 to 5 objectives, and objectives contain some kind of directional gesture. Like we're either decreasing fatalities or we're increasing reliability, things of that nature. And the point of all these goals is to make progress. The point of all these objectives are to make progress towards the stated goals. we also have measures for some of these things, and most of you here have heard Zach talk about safety measures, things like the rate of fatalities and serious injuries. And so as part of the MTP process, we put together a system performance report and share that on the Connections 2050 webpage. And the way that this is structured is meant to be a little easier to digest than just the core data. So the system performance report will be an appendix to the MTP, which will include all the data we need to share with the federal highway reviewers, but it will also include a simplified chapter that just talks at a high level about the information that we're seeing here, our how successful we are in making progress towards our stated goals. All right, next steps. Just wrapping up here. In the coming months, we'll be putting together a traffic model or demand forecast, travel demand forecast that'll tell us where and when, well, not when, it'll tell us where we'll have deficiencies in capacity in our roads in the year 2050. And so all that will be documented again in an appendix to the MTP, and we'll include a simplified version of it in the chapters itself so that people can understand this. There'll also be the ever important project selection. Although, as many of you are aware, the combination of inflation and stagnant revenues has meant that there's not a lot of capacity for new projects. And so the project list probably won't look all that different than it did in our previous MTP. There'll be a financial analysis. This is really the mastery of Mr. Nate Miller. And all that will be documented in the MTP as required by federal reviewers. And then we will put out a draft MTP plan for public comment. And we're aiming for September because we are obligated to have an updated MTP adopted by December 31st of this year, the last day of this year. So we will, be going through the final chapters of the MTP in the coming months, and by this fall, we'll have a draft to share with the public, and with the anticipation that we'll be able to adopt it before the end of the year. That is everything I have for an update on the MTP. As I noted at the beginning, there is this Project Connections 2050 project website at bit.ly/SNHPC 2050. And I encourage anyone who has an interest in this to go to the webpage and check it out. And as I noted, all the draft chapters that have been created thus far are on the webpage, available for public consumption. The goal really here is to be as transparent as possible about the planning process. That's it.
So.
All right. Thank you.
Any questions from our home viewers or folks in the room?
I did have one question about like the freight piece. Are we finding it's more first mile, last mile? Or
In terms of
how the freight transportation is occurring, is it more first mile, last mile? Because I know that when I had the discussions with Old Dominion, they're like, well, we're more, we're doing it like it seemed like some of it was changing where they were doing, they would do like the first mile and then they tandem. So like they don't have to worry about those hours as much, but that may just be their model.
Yeah, it's interesting dynamic of freight. Stuff coming into the region. In some instances, there's stuff coming out of the region. There's stuff moving around within the region. And there are businesses that specialize in each one of those kind of logistical moves. And then you have overarching businesses like Amazons and the UPSs that are offering sort of two-door services for end users, customers. And so they're all serving different functions. We did hear in our interview yesterday that if you were talking about like tandem trailers, there was a lot of interest in that subject, and it was new to us. We hadn't heard that that was something that was prioritized by freight. And so we'll be looking into that, incorporating that into our thinking.
Yeah, so that's one of my soapbox items is, that freight safety and the ability to have places for people to pull off and rest. We have more in our region, I think, than others do. But it's a need, or it's been a need, but I'm wondering if that need is changing with some of these more logistical changes in the larger freight companies.
Yeah, we did ask them about, how is technology going to change your driver behavior? And the answer was, we don't really see it yet.
Yeah.
Other than technology, safety tools are coming into play. So
Okay.
forward-facing cameras, rearward-facing cameras, driver-facing cameras, side lane cameras, departure, braking tools, like all these technologies that you're seeing in customers' like cars that you would buy off the lot, they're coming to trucks and they're making it safer, reducing crashes.
Yeah.
So that was something that they saw. But in terms of reducing overall need for drivers, there were no real mentions of like autonomous vehicles or anything of that nature.
I know, I think like from a planning perspective, as like I know some of our needs are shifting, or what's happening in our community shifting. And I've always been a huge advocate of, if you're gonna have some kind of distribution facility and having trucks coming and going, then you need to supply overnight accommodations, or you need to supply showers, or, something for your drivers. And so I'm just like, I wanna make sure that I need to stay on that soapbox.
SNHPC advocates that through our development regional impact. Whenever we're doing a warehouse manufacturing site assessment, we will make sure to include those elements into our memos.
Yeah, because I hate to harp on it, but I think freight is sometimes an area that is so overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really critical.
And what we did hear yesterday about one of the limiting factors for those type of amenities, especially for overnight areas for the drivers, is insurance at the site.
So, okay, all right.
Two thoughts. One, I think Liz is now on the payroll because I couldn't have planted any of those comments better. Two, just as a quick overview for folks who aren't quite catching what James was talking about. Yesterday, we had sort of a listening session with freight representatives in the freight industry. So UPS and a whole host of folks. So there were 8 folks online. It was quite educational for us. Dave, Jim, and I were part of that. And so we heard for the first time some of the things that Jim was just talking about. And they were explaining that the technology is changing on trucks, just like it's changing in cars, and that it's actually quite safer to have a tandem truck. And we've all seen those, like I've driven across country where you'll see, even in out west, you'll see 3 tandems. That's always interesting. It's like driving past a train. But they were talking about the safety of 2 tandems. I think they were talking about 27. I'm going to guess those are 27 footers compared to one giant, like 53-foot truck, which they were saying it's more difficult to navigate. So it was really interesting, but they're talking about policies, and we're going to write this up into a short report and share that with everyone. But they're very interested in building a relationship, and it was quite interesting. And of course, we thought of you, Lucy, but it was really great meeting. But everything Liz is talking about, that freight parking on site, especially for warehouse sort of distribution centers. We have created a model ordinance within our freight parking report, and that's all on our website.
Thank you.
It's not exactly edge of your seat kind of stuff, but it is important when you're talking with, and when exactly as Dave has talked about, we do a lot of review for warehouse distribution type centers, and we're always bringing to the table the concept of overnight parking, because if it's not here, where is it? And they talked about insurance for those companies, and sometimes they don't allow that overnight parking. So how we handle that as a state, it's really important.
One thing I'm recognizing for myself is that I realizing I don't really have enough language to describe the way freight functions. It would be really useful if we had maybe a speaker in the future who could talk about the right terminology for different types of freight and how they function, how they come into the region, leave the region, or move about the region. Because in everything I read about freight, it talks about it in sort of a macro scale, sort of conceptual way. In reality, the kind of things that we're talking about here, this a long haul trucker coming in from 1,000 miles away is looking for a place of respite. That's a very specific type of freight, and I don't think we quite have the language to talk about that.
And I have a feeling that the way distribution is changing, it's taking some of that away. So like, we're not gonna see as much of the long haul truckers as we used to. So the days of, whatever in the bear are kind of gone, BJ and the bear, like those days are gone. And I'm really dating myself.
Yeah, you are,
But,
because I'm the only one laughing.
You guys need to YouTube that. But I think it's changing with the first mile, last mile. So like, you've got New Balance. How are they handling their freight coming out? Like, what's happening there, So, I think it's, little shipments going out, but we're going to a distribution center. Someone else is going to pick it up, and it's happening quickly, like Amazon does with those every 10-minute things. But how is that how's that changing in the industry? How do we react to that? Because if I don't have to say, like, put a shower in there, man, if I don't have to do that, then that's okay.
Yeah, it's a really good, I'm glad you brought up New Balance too, because that's a very interesting, like, they intentionally built a manufacturing facility next to the Manchester airport for a reason.
First month, yeah.
And but they're still bringing in raw materials,
Absolutely.
right? So they, to make a sneaker, they still need X amount of rubber and X amount of a textile. And so there's still a need for freight in some factor, but they just figured out that, hey, actually, this might be a more cost-effective way to deliver sneakers.
Yeah.
But we don't really, it's almost like a mystery box. You can't quite see the thinking behind that.
Yeah, and I know freight is, it's a piece of the whole MTP, but like I said, I think sometimes it's a piece we overlook. So.
Excellent discussion. Thank you. Lucy.
Oh, go for it. Sorry.
I was just gonna comment, we are things updating with freight planning. We will be having some future here, so stay tuned. And I've been corresponding with Dave on different issues that they had state, but these are all things that are being discussed at a national level as well, and information about truck parking, about logistics, about, autonomous vehicles, all the changes in technology, how truckers know about bridge heights, all of those things are being discussed, and some of that information with updated information about freight and so.
Yay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Right. In touch.
Keep me in the loop.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Mac had a comment.
Yeah, we had an event a few years ago, I think like back in 2018, that we had a speaker from Cabot talk about their basically their truck shipping. They have done a lot of advanced lower emissions technologies and driving training and various things like that. And they also have hybrids, which is really cool. So I might be able to see if Jess has a contact for them. They just might be a good organization because they are a B Corp and they do a lot of, not like large scale freight shipping, but they do a lot of like tractor trailer shipment. So.
And as part of the state update, we are.
Yeah, one of the things that came up in our discussion yesterday with our trucking friends was weather notification and the appreciation of keeping roads open here in New Hampshire, because they were talking about it's almost a competition, which, you know, different states close their highways quickly, and they really appreciated that we do not. And so that was an interesting conversation. And it didn't matter if it was winter or flooding, it was, you know, sort of that year-round weather notification and how important that was. So that was part of that conversation as well. Anyway, I can't believe we've talked this much about freight at a meeting. We weren't even going to talk about freight, so I'm happy. All right, since that's it on our agenda, I wanted to ask real quick from the folks that are here, is there anything that the commission might present on transportation that you would like to hear, whether that's complete streets or our bike ped information or transit, our bus buddy program that's happening, any special or 10-year plan, which, you know, you love to hear about, anything that sort of is we haven't so much focused on and that you'd like to hear about. Anything? No, you just love what we talk about no matter what. Okay. Oh, Becky.
Yeah, sure. I would love like bike ped from a regional perspective and maybe get a better understanding of what our neighboring regional planning areas are doing too, so that we can understand how connections might happen.
Nice one. I like that. Thank you, Becky. That's a great idea. And Adam and Dave are in the room, so they've just heard that. And certainly Zach has done a lot of mapping with all that. So we will put that, we'll put our brains together, and which sounds a little Frankensteinish, but anyway, we'll put our heads together and think about that one. Any other topics? All right. Well, thanks for that one, Becky. And I guess that's, unless Nate, have I missed something or we're good?
I think we're good.
All right.
Lucy has something.
Ah, Lucy.
So I just had two comments here. Is that the public comment period for STIP Amendment 1 runs through June 20th through July 1st. I mean, you guys will be getting your appeal, just to make that note. And there will be the GASIP kickoff meeting on June 25th. And that's just a public meeting. It's not an opportunity for public input or anything. It's just the initial, introduction of the ideas, the discussion with GASIP.
And since we have some new planners in the room, Lucy, I wonder if I can press you to talk a little bit about GASIT, and also I know that's in Concord, but maybe talk a little bit about location and things like that.
Well, GASIT stands for the Governor's Advisory, GACI, Governor's Advisory Commission on Intermodal Transportation, and it includes 5 executive counselors, and then the Commissioner of New Hampshire DOT, which is William Cass. And what they do is that as part of the 10-year plan process, they hold public hearings when New Hampshire DOT prepares a draft 10-year plan, and GAS holds the public hearings in the fall. Then there's a whole process after they hold the public hearings, and then it's a legislative process. Then basically a year from now or more than a year from now, go to the governor for signature of the 10-year plan. So it's a very extensive process. There's a lot of opportunities for public input. Each of the executive counselors who make up GASIT, they get to decide how many public hearings they want to hold on the draft 10-year plan. And it has ranged from 20-some to 40-some over the years. So we, as I said, the first kickoff meeting is on June 25th. And after that, the discussions with them as to where they want their meetings, how many they want. And those occur generally in mid to late September through early November.
And then that first kickoff meeting, is there an allowance for public input, or is this just, okay, this is just
the kickoff meeting.
Just wanted to clarify that. Yeah.
There won't be any public input at the meeting. Largely, it will be, there are 2 new counselors, so it's in part an orientation for them and a refresher for the existing counselors. DOT will likely do a presentation that sets some high level, kind of big picture, concepts that are driving the the 10-year plan. They'll refresh the GASSET members on process. They'll talk a little bit about schedule. It'll be a pretty high level type overview. The draft 10-year plan won't be released next week or anything like that. It's really an orientation type kickoff meeting.
And then there typically is a second meeting, which is in August, which at that point, following that meeting is generally when the draft 10-year plan is, And if you want to look more about, obviously this new information isn't there yet, but if you go onto the website, you can look at some of the ones from previous sessions where that was happening. Draft, it shows the presentations that went to GASSET and that presentations and go through the legislative process. It gives you a general idea of how it all works.
And Lucy, just for everyone and our recording here, where is that located?
Where's the GASSET meeting gonna be?
Yes.
Be at the State House. I don't have the exact.
Council chambers.
Council chambers. I don't have the exact address, but it's at the state House, yeah.
Okay, at the State House Council. All right.
There'll be there's public notice and everything on that, sorry.
So you can go to the New Hampshire DOT website and look for that GASSET public notice. Yep. All right, so thank you for those announcements. And thanks for our virtual viewers, and so long till next time.
We got a BJ and the Bear reference.
I know.
Not sure I've heard a BJ and the Bear reference in a long time.
You go with the Eastman's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, come on.
I know. No,
That's
BJ
the low end.
I know.
Breaker, breaker.
There was always a fight.
I drove to Los Angeles years ago with a CB in the car. It was quite fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Used to be part of
where every cop was, they were